Hello and assalamualaikum and good day everyone. Today I'm going to share with all of you on how to write a decorator in Python. So, how does a decorator looks like in Python? Right? In Python, the decorator can be seen something like this. We use the add and then we call it decorator and then we define our function. And of course, we just need to write our logic for the function. So this is basically what a decorator looks like. Now, what is exactly a decorator? For me, to make things easy, I would like to define decorator as a function that takes in another function. So any function that takes in another function can be called as a decorator. At least for me. I think you can try to search in the internet what is a decorator in-depth explanation. But to make things easier, for me, I would like to define decorator as a function that takes in another function. Now, so just bear with me. Decorator is a function that takes in another function. Try to remember that. So how are we going to try to write a decorator? To write a decorator, we need to define a function because, as I mentioned previously, it's a function, right? So it can be any name. For now, I just put a function. Sorry, for now, I just put as a decorator. Now remember that a decorator is a function that takes in another function. So I'm expecting this decorator function to take in another function. And then I can return anything for now. Hello world. Just to make things simple. Can this be used as a decorator? Of course. Even though it doesn't solve any issues, it doesn't solve any problem. But as long as it is a function, that takes in a function, another function, then it is a decorator. So how are we going to use this one? So I can just straight away call it decorator and then define our function. A function can be anything. I just put as I'm don't expecting any argument for now. Then can just write from a func, right? So if I were to call a function that we created just now, which is a func, what will happen, right? Because we are already at the decorator. Let's see what happened to the function when we exclude the decorator. Of course, we just clear the terminal. Try to run it one more time. Of course, we just straight away call the function and return the from a func. But if we put the decorator back and run the script again, it mentioned here is type error str object is not callable. Where's the error happen? Is somewhere here. What does the exception suggesting? Or the error suggesting? So the error suggests that this function is not a callable. It's a string. So I can just remove the bracket and try to run it again. And there you have it. A func is now hello world, which is something that we mentioned over here. So how does this happening? How does the decorator actually works at the back? So to understand easily, every time we call the decorator, the add decorator, every time we call the add decorator or any other decorator, right? What it does is it actually taking the name of the function and then reassign it to this function decorator. Oh, sorry, I'm writing at the wrong place. Decorator. And of course, the decorator is expecting a function. As you can see over here, it takes in the function that we created just now. You see? We are reassigning the function, which is for this case is a func, with the decorator function, which takes in function. For this case is the a func as well, the original function. So now we have a func that is different from the previous function, right? So how we gonna try to understand this? So what does the decorator returns? A decorator returns hello world. So now a func is hello world, right? You can see that how these things works, right? A func now is a hello world. Why? Because we are calling decorator, and the decorator takes in the function. Even though for now we don't do anything with the function, but it returns a hello world. There you have it, the simplest way of doing decorator. But of course, this is just an example. It doesn't solve any issues, doesn't solve any problem. So how are we going to make use of this decorator? So to make use of this decorator, what we can do is actually we can define a function inside the decorator. So we can actually try to define something. Let's say I'm going to put the inner and remove the written hello world. And then I'm going to say that print, let's say we are doing some processing before running the function. And then we are running the function. We are calling the function. Then we are after run func. Then we actually return the result. Then again, I just return inner. So you can see that now, instead of just returning a string, the decorator is returning a inner function, right? And what does the inner function do is, the inner function add something, oh sorry, it adds some processing. We can do some logic before and do, oh sorry, do some logic after. So this is the beautiful of the decorator. So we are not trying to you know, change the function, to add functionality to the function by changing the function, but we just add the function on top of the function, right? Now, since the logic has been changed, let's try to understand what it will do at the back, right? So you can see that when we call decorator in this way, what it actually do is it reassigning a func into this decorator. We are calling the decorator function, which takes in the function, the original function, this one, right? So now, if we look properly into this one, we have a decorator, which is this one, takes in a function, and when it takes a function, what does it do? It returns the inner. It returns the inner. Now we can say that the func is not a hello world. Func is now the inner function. So what does the inner function do? The inner function doesn't take any argument, but it sure does print before run func and after run func, and then it returns some result. So if I try to run print a func, so oh sorry, I can remove this one. Before run func and after run func, and it returns whatever been written by the decorated function, which is this one from a func. And there you have it, simple setting of decorator. But problem arises when I try to, do some debugging or, anything. You can say that running func, uh, just call a func. So I'm expecting that when I'm printing a func, it will return a func. At least the function name is a func, right? Not any other function. But bear in mind, a func now is inner function that is taken from the decorator. So it will not give something useful if I try to print this script. You can see that try to running function decorator dot locals dot inner. So since a function now is a inner, the function that we created now is inner function. Hence, when we print the a func, it will give function decorator. You can see this one decorator. And then since the inner function is inside the decorator, that's why they put the locals and inner. So how do we try to fix this? So there's a we can try to import the func tools, and we can actually use this to fix this issue. Func tools.wraps func. We are taking the function, the decorator function, and wrap it there to wrap the inner function. So what happens after I run this script? So now for sure I know that the running function is function a func, right? So I don't have any confusion. I know that which function is running, so it's clear for me. Then I can easily, happily continue debugging, right? Now we have a simple setting for the decorator. What happens if we want to add an argument or multiple argument? Depends, right? So I can just put arg, or I can just put arg1, arg2. So if I try to run a func, and we say that a func missing two required positional argument, argument 1 and argument 2. But where does the error comes from? So you mentioned here the errors come from the inner, line 16 in inner, this one. So the error is actually coming from here, because now this is the decorator function, right? And the decorator function is expecting argument 1 and argument 2. But we don't have anything here. So how are we going to solve this one? So try to remember. Now the a func is the inner function, which is this one. So any argument that goes into a function must goes into the inner functions first. So what we can do is we can put argument 1 and argument 2. And we're going to take the argument and argument 2 here. Right? So what happened now? If I try to run it again. And there you have it. We're running a function called a func, and we do some processing or do some logic before running the function, and we run the function, and we do some processing after running the function, and then we return the result. So now we know that how to use argument inside the decorator. And the next question is how we gonna use the type hinting when writing a decorator, right? So to make things easier, I just create a new file. This is just a sample how to create a decorator with type hinting. So let's create a decorator called decorator. So try to remember that a decorator is just a function that takes in another function, and we already have this logic here. So I'm going to copy paste everything, and I will import the func2, right? And I also import, so from typing, import the callable. So at least now we know that the function, the decorator function, is a callable. And I think this should be fine, right? Okay, now we can use the decorator straight away, and then we define our function, a func again. For now, I just return something, a func now doesn't have any argument, right? So it doesn't give any error. So what if I put some, what if, imagine a decorator is expecting a function that has a certain parameter. So I can say that it's expecting a string and integer, and also expecting to return some string, or I can say, let's say integer. So you can see that if I try to save this one, then if we give some error here, where it said that argument 1 to decorator has incompatible type, callable, no parameter or argument, and then any, because now it's expecting a callable string integer and returns integer. Okay, so be mindful on what you're setting up here, because it will affect the way that we need to define our function here. So let's say if we need to have argument with string and integer. So what we can do is we can just put argument 1 string and argument 2 integer, and we are expecting to return some integer, right? So now you have it. There's no more error. But remember, when we do something, when we're using decorator, try to understand in a way that if we run like this, a function, we call the anything that we return here, and then it takes in the function, a func. So for this case, we are calling a decorator function, which is this one, which is expecting a function, which in return the inner function. But now you can say that a func is the inner function. However, you can see that the inner function doesn't have any argument. So we need to fix here. What we need to do is we can actually, since we already know that this is a str and integer, so I can just simply write here arg1 str and arg2 integer. And since the function is expecting str and integer, the decorated function, so we can just pass the anything that we declare here to the decorated function. So there's no more error. Now, if we try to run this one, right, a func. Now, the funny thing is, when we write it this way, what's happening, what will happen is, we don't have a proper parameter name. So for example, like this one is argument underscore 1 and argument underscore 2, and this one is argument 1 or argument 2, but as long as the type is the same, which is string and integer, should be fine. But if we give a a confusing code or type hinting or hint or anything what you want to call. So now if I try to control bar, we give the suggestion of argument 1 without the underscore. Why? Because the function is now the inner function, this one, which is expecting this argument. Right? We try to fix that later, but let me just try to finish it and see if it's working. There you have it. We have a before run function, after run function, and it returns 2. Why does it return 2? Because a func is returning 2. Right? Okay. Now we know that the function is working. How are we gonna fix this issue? The argument 1 and argument underscore 1. Well, here comes the parent spec. Oops, sorry. From typing extension, parent spec. So we can use the parent spec to solve this issue actually. So how are we going to solve this issue? We're going to use the parent spec and of course a little bit of type file, generic typing. So let's start with declaring the parent spec. So I just put the parent spec as P and the type file T. So I just straight away declaring as it is, right? So now we don't have any issue with this one. You can just put P and it turns T. Okay. So now we are expecting the decorator to text in a function which is a callable that takes in any parameter that has been defined in the function and any type that is being returned by that function. For this case, which is a func. Right? What we can do next is we need to fix the inner because a func is now following the inner function. So we can ask the inner function to follow the a func. So how we're going to do that is we can just simply use the parent spec. So let's say we have an argument which is p.args and then keyword argument which is p.quarks. Right? And then I can just simply take the args and the quarks. As simple as that. So if we try to go to the a func again, try to write it, now it gives me a suggestion of argument underscore 1, which is following the original argument that we already set. So now you can try argument 2 and see if it's working or not. Right? So it's working. So no issue. Okay? So that's how you try to play around with this. Of course, I cannot cover everything about the type hinting, but you can experiment it and do a lot of things with type hinting. Now, we are doing a simple decorator. Not simple, at least it's more complex than the previous one. You can see inside here, func2.wraps is actually a decorator as well. But you can see that this decorator is taking an argument. So the next question is, how are we going to do a decorator that takes in an argument? Okay, so now let's start with, I can say that, let's start from scratch. Oops, sorry. So to make a decorator that takes in an argument, you can start by doing some defining decorator, because the decorator is a function. But this time we are taking some argument. So for example, I can say that the decorator which is run is expecting an argument called run with a type of integer. And what does it do is we can define another which I can say is an inner decorator, and this one we can do exactly the same as the previous one, right? So the inner decorator here is exactly the same just like this one. Now the inner decorator is exactly the same just like the previous decorator that we've created. So the, the inner decorator is expecting a function which is a callable, which takes in params back and return a generic type, depends on whatever been written by the decorated function, right? And then we have a func2 dot wrap a func, and this will be the inner function. So the inner function we have the same argument as the decorated function. So I can just simply write as p dot args and and the keyword argument p dot quarks. Okay, and we do some processing. I can say that we are doing some print before, then we are trying to run the function which is func. Again, we are taking the arguments and the keyword arguments. This time we don't need to concern anything because the inner is taking the same argument as the decorated function. Then print after. Then we return the result itself. And of course, remember to return the inner function as well as the inner decorator. Alright. Since we have this run, so I just want to make use of the run argument. So while run is less than, let's declare t equal to 1. So while, doesn't sound put, right? It could be anything. While t is less than run. So we can just run the function, then print t. Then we try to increment by 1. Okay. So now we have a decorator that's expecting an argument. So how are we going to use this decorator? Right? So how are we going to use the decorator that we created just now? So we can just simply call decorator. And then the function of the decorator, we need to call the decorator, but this time the decorator is calling is expecting an argument called run. So maybe I can just put run equal to 5, maybe, could be anything. Then we define our function a func, right? So I would like to have argument 1 as a string, and then argument 2 as an integer. And what we do is technically just return argument 1 times by argument 2, right? So what actually happens at the back? Let us try to understand that first. Okay, so remember that when we are calling add decorator, we are calling in this way. What does it do is actually try to reassign a function a func to anything that we call over here, decorator. And for this case, we are calling the run equal to 5. And it expecting to call a function to text in another function, right? So for this case, we're expecting to text another function, which is a func. Now try to look back into our logic in decorator. When we call the decorator, what does it return? It returns the inner decorator. You can see that it returns the inner decorator. When we call the decorator, it returns the inner decorator. So now, when we call the decorator with the argument around 5, it returns the inner decorator. So the inner decorator is expecting a function. Right? It's expecting a function. So what does it return? It returns the inner function. So we can say that everything here has become the inner function. So if I try to run this thing, a func, what we give, argument a, and then argument 2, say is b. We try to run it. It's supposedly an integer. So you can see that function a func is now the inner function, which if we run print before and try to run up until when, as long as the t is less than what we declare in our decorator, run 5. So you run for multiple times and then print the time run 1, 2, 3, 4, and we print after, and then it return the result. And for this case, the result is a multiplied by 3. So you have a triple A. And there you have it on how to create a decorator in Python. Thank you and see you again. Bye bye.